In this video, I'm going to walk you through 4 distinct communication styles so you can learn how to better connect with healthcare providers. So first, I'll explain what those 4 communication styles are, and then I'm going to give you some tips on how you can adapt your own behavior so you can improve communication and build stronger relationships. So throughout your person's healthcare journey, you are going to meet a variety of medical professionals. There'll be doctors and nurses. They may be seeing some specialists, and of course, there'll be support staff. But let's be real, you're not going to jive with all of these people. And many times this comes down to a difference in communication styles. We take in information differently and we interact with the world differently. And what I learned during my sister and my dad's illness is that the old saying is true. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And in this situation, that means the better you can connect with the medical professionals, the more likely you are to win them over and get your loved one better care. Now, I get it, that may seem unfair or that may seem unethical, but let's be real, that's just life. And I've even confirmed this with healthcare providers. So think about it from their perspective. If you have 2 patients and you need to get to both of them, but one has an advocate who is grouchy, condescending, and always combative, while the other has an advocate who's cordial, who engages you and is always looking for ways to support their loved one, which makes your job easier, which one would you prefer to help? So let me share these 4 core communication styles. These are all based off of the work of Dr. Carl Jung. Now, Dr. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychologist who studied how people naturally prefer to share and receive information. And using his work is going to be to your advantage and help you be a badass advocate. And now you'll notice as I walk through these that I gave each communication style a bit of a nickname or a persona, if you will, just to make it a little bit more relatable and easier for you to picture. So we're going to start in the top left corner where it says Dr. Driver. This physician is going to be very direct and results oriented. They will focus on the goals of the treatment, and also they want to know what the results are, the outcomes. They may give you very concise, to the point answers. And depending on your communication style, they may come off as aggressive or impatient or blunt, where they think they're being assertive and confident. So just be aware that if someone is coming off as overly confident or too aggressive, it's just their communication style. They will prefer to give you brief, relevant updates, and they're probably not going to have a lot of small talk. So, again, depending on your communication style, that may come off as being rushed or short fused. Because if you're taking too long to explain something, they may seem irritated. Okay, so just be aware of that. Now, Dr. Expressive in the top right corner is a little different. They are a storyteller. They are a big picture thinker. So they want to focus on the connection to the patient. They are very friendly and animated, but they also, depending on your communication style, may come off as too talkative and sometimes overly persuasive because they do prefer conversation. So even though they might not be trying to persuade you one way or the other, it can feel that way to you. They will more likely tell stories than go deep into data. So if you want more data, make sure that you ask questions specifically around it. They often engage in groups and they also like to teach through examples, right? There's that storytelling again. Also, they may be hard to keep on track and on time, okay? Because they lose track of time when they're talking too much. Let's move to the bottom right corner, to doctor relational. So this doctor is going to be compassionate and patient-centered. So they will most likely focus on the impact to the patient. They may give very compassionate answers. They are typically, I like to call them the nurturer because that's what they're focusing on, right? Nurturing the patient. But to some of you who don't lead with this style of communication, they may come off as stubborn or too soft or too docile. Okay, so just be aware that this is based on their communication style. They are patient, relaxed, and they're very caring. Now, if you're going to ask them questions, just know that they prefer to be given time to think about it and then give you an answer. They do not like to be pushed into making a decision. So that's good to be aware of. And the bottom left quadrant is doctor analytical. Now, this doctor is very detail oriented. They are data driven. And honestly, a lot of physicians will lead with this communication style. They will focus on data and test results and scientific evidence. So if you want information on data, this is the doctor who will give you a lot. Now, for some of you, they'll give you too much data and too much information. It's going to overwhelm you. So just make sure you slow down and go back and clarify and ask questions as you go if you're overwhelmed with information. They will give you very thorough and detailed explanations, but they also may come off as formal or emotionally detached. And just again, it's a different communication style. So if you don't lead with this kind of communication style, be aware if they seem too formal or emotionally detached, that is why. Because they prefer the facts and the research over feelings or stories. And the other thing to be aware of, kind of like Dr. Relational, when you ask them questions, it may take them time to consider all the information before responding. So just be aware of that. Okay, so now that you're familiar with the 4 personas, let me give you a few tips on how you can better adapt your behavior and connect with them to build stronger relationships. Now, let me be clear, this isn't about being fake. We all have those 4 communication styles, everyone. But we typically tend to prefer 1 or 2 of them. So when I went through those, if you're like, oh, that's totally me, well, that's your preference. That's how you tend to communicate. It doesn't mean that the way someone else communicates is wrong or better or worse. It's all neutral. It's just a preference. So that means that we can tap into the other communication styles because we have it. We use it at times. It's just not the one that we use most of the time. All right, so let's talk about these tips and how can you better adapt and connect with these physicians. I keep saying physicians, but this also works for nurses and support staff. So let's again start with Dr. Driver. How can you better connect with Dr. Driver? Well, come prepared. Have clear, succinct questions and concise information. You do want to focus on the goals and the outcomes and the next steps rather than telling stories, right? So they don't like a lot of small talk. Don't go into long explanations. Come with very succinct, concise information. Also, speak confidently. Don't let their assertiveness, and even if you're seeing them as aggressive, feel intimidating. Don't let that intimidate you. Avoid rambling. Avoid repeating yourself. Once you made your point, zip it and listen and allow them space to lead. But that doesn't mean that you don't have a voice, but you can give them that space to lead, and then you assert your priorities very calmly. Okay? All right, let's move to the right, top right. Dr. Expressive. Remember, this is the storyteller. So it is best to open with friendly rapport building before diving into details. So if this isn't your communication style, make that effort. Keep your questions focused, but conversational. Now you want them focused because they're talkative, right? So they can go off on tangents. So you can always come back if you feel like they've gone down a road that you didn't mean to. Also, allow space for them to share their stories or examples. But again, if you need to redirect them, feel free to do that. Be warm and engaged and avoid seeming curt or disinterested. That's going to kill that rapport. And you don't want to overwhelm them with too much technical information, okay? Bottom right, doctor relational. So this is the doctor who's compassionate and patient-centered. So you want to share observations about how care is affecting the patient emotionally and physically. That's going to be important to them. Give them time to reflect, remember, before answering. So don't rush them. If they're in the middle of thinking and you're moving on to the next question, that's going to fluster them. Give them time. You have to be patient and just avoid pressuring them for instant decisions. It's not going to work in your behavior. Also, offer honest feedback in a gentle way. They may take that criticism personally because they are patient-centered and they are compassionate, so just be aware of that. And then make sure that you bring up any issues early on if you can, rather than waiting till the end. That's just not going to sit well. And then the last one, Dr. Analytical. Remember, this is the detail-oriented, data-driven doctor. So just because they communicate this way, you want to also come to the table with thorough, well-organized records and factual details. The more buttoned up you can be with this information, the better. They are probably going to have a bunch of questions for you, so the more information you have, the better. In return, ask clear, specific questions that are grounded in evidence. Avoid, telling long stories or giving them too much information that isn't relevant. It is relevant maybe to you and of course the patient, but to them, they won't see it that way. You want to keep it objective. And be patient, kind of like Dr. Relational. They will pause to think, right? And I've made this mistake before. You want to give them time to think through it and process that information. That's what they're doing. So if they're quiet, just pay attention, sit, maybe count to 5 or 10 in your head and let them answer. And you want to stay professional and composed rather than casual. Okay, I hope that's helpful. All of those details are also below. So I know I went through that, but it's a lot to absorb. So print those out or download them and make sure they have them, review them, kind of analyze what you think these medical professionals, how they communicate, and how you can better adapt and connect with them. So in the end, you can use these personas to identify anyone's communication style. It's not just doctors, like I said. For our purposes, I'm focusing on healthcare providers, but use it and practice it on the people in your personal life. That is a great way to kind of hone in on that skill and build it. Plus, it's a lot of fun to analyze how others prefer to communicate, including yourself. All right, good luck. Go do it. You got this.